E adesso veniamo a un altro momento. Devo dire che in questa scaletta c'è anche una forte dose di creatività, lo avete visto anche nell'apertura musicale e continua anche ora, perché la prossima persona che salirà su questo palco, che è stata anche su altri palchi in giro per il mondo, il TED, uno per tutti, è un uomo che si definisce a writer who draws, uno scrittore che disegna. Ha fatto della contaminazione la sua cifra. È anche un autore di libri, bestseller del New York Times. È un uomo che alcuni dicono abbia trovato una chiave che potrebbe salvare la crisi della carta stampata, addirittura. Il suo discorso è incentrato sul tema del furto. Signore e signori, do il benvenuto ad Austin Kleon.
Hey y'all, that's Chow in Texan. I'm a Twitter junkie and an Instagram junkie, so if at any point you want to tweet something I say or take a picture of the slides, I'm totally okay with that, bene. I'm Austin Kleon on Twitter and Instagram. If you don't know me or what I do, this is kind of how I became known. What I do is I take a page from the New York Times and I find an article and I start making boxes around words that pop out at me. And I turn those words into little funny phrases or sayings or poems. And then I black out everything I don't need. This is what it looks like when I'm done. Sort of looks like if the CIA did haiku. This one reads, "In Texas, there is nothing but Texas." This one is called "Overheard on the Titanic." It says, "I mean, yes, we're sinking, but the music is exceptional." I've been married for about 10 years, so this is my ode to marriage. Marriage is two people in love standing in the same bathroom. I collected these in 2010 into a book called Newspaper Blackout. Unfortunately, it has not been translated into Italian. And it was a poetry book, so as you may well know, I kept my day job. But after Newspaper Blackout came out, I wrote 2 more books about creativity. The first book was called Steal Like an Artist, and the second book was called Show Your Work. Now these actually did okay, and they have been translated into Italian by the Milan publisher Valorizzare. I'm only going to talk about the first book today and the ideas inside them, but I wanted to take a quick pause and thank y'all for having me here, because there's actually a connection to Italy in my first book. If you open up my first book, the first illustration is a picture of me in Florence when I was 19, trying to be a writer. And funny enough, the last illustration in the book is the Via San Leonardo in Florence. So there's an Italian connection to that book before I even knew I was going to be back. I haven't been in Italy since 2004, so this is very exciting to me. So grazie. I want to lay out 2 things before I start. Number 1, creative is not a noun. Now, I don't know what the equivalent is in Italian, but in the United States, we use creative as a noun. There's creatives, say in an advertising agency, there are the creatives, and then there's the people in accounts, or something like that. I hate using the word creative as a noun because I think that everyone's creative, and I think that when you call some people creative and other people not creative, it limits all of us. The comedian John Cleese, he says, creativity is not a talent, it is a way of operating. So what I think John Cleese is saying is that creativity is less of a thing that you have, and it's more of a thing that you do. It's not a noun, it's a verb. It's a way of operating. Now, so that's the first thing. Creative is not a noun. We're all creative. Creativity is a way of operating. When I heard that Intesa Sanpaolo was going to be the host for this talk, I came up with a couple of banker jokes, thinking about bankers. I'm going to use the term artist a lot here today, but whenever you hear the term artist or art, I want you to just insert whatever your job title is. I actually think that artists and bankers aren't that different. Oscar Wilde said that when bankers get together for dinner, they talk about art, and when artists get together for dinner, they talk about money. And Andy Warhol, I just saw his Last Suppers in Milan at the Novecento Museum. Very dark and depressing. But Warhol said that making money is art and business is the best kind of art. So today, do we have any bankers in the room? Are there bankers in the room? Or are we all different? There's probably not any bankers here. We're going to talk about art, but whatever it is that you do, you're an artist today, okay? So that's number 2. All right. Every artist gets asked the question, where do you get your ideas? Where do your ideas come from? And I think the honest artist answers, I steal them. How does an artist look at the world? This is how I think they look at the world. First, they look at something. Is it worth stealing? If yes, steal it. If not, move on to the next thing. And I think an artist is always looking in the world for things to use. And I think that when you look at the world this way, you stop worrying about what's good or bad. There's only things worth stealing and things not worth stealing. Because what artists know is something that a lot of people know, but we're not always forthcoming with the information, and that is nothing in this world is completely original. All creative work that we do builds on what came before, and all new ideas are remixes or mashups of ideas that came before us. Now, I'll go back to that word steal. A lot of people ask me, Austin, why do you have to use the word steal? Can't you just say, be influenced like an artist, or borrow like an artist? And I say, I use the word steal because I'm not original. Pablo Picasso, he said, art is theft. Someone once asked David Bowie if he was original. He said, no, 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 I'm more like a tasteful thief. Bowie said the only art he would look at is the art that he could steal from.
It comes down to trying to expose yourself to the best things that humans have done, and then try to bring those things in to what you're doing. I mean, Picasso had a saying, he said, good artists copy, great artists steal. And we have, always been shameless about stealing great ideas.
The American filmmaker Woody Allen, he said the same thing. He said he was a shameless thief. The American writer Kurt Vonnegut, he said if you're going to steal, steal from the best. And Bob Dylan, maybe America's greatest plagiarist, he said, steal a little, they throw you in jail. Steal a lot, and they make you a king. It's true in his case. But perhaps the person who said it best is, I think, the poet T.S. Eliot. And T.S. Eliot said the phrase that you often hear, bad artists copy, great artists steal. What T.S. Eliot said was, immature poets imitate, and mature poets steal. But the next part of the phrase is very important, and it's something that we often forget. T.S. Eliot said that the good poet takes what he's stolen and welds it into something completely new, something that's totally different from the thing that he had originally stolen from. And I think that what T.S. Eliot was talking about is, we often hear that phrase, imitation is flattery. I don't know what the Italian equivalent is, but in the States we say, oh, imitation is flattery. But anyone who's had their work imitated knows that imitation is not flattery. It does not feel good to be imitated. But what is good is transformation. It's taking the things that you've stolen and turning them into something new. And so what I want to talk about for the rest of the time I have with y'all is a kind of honor amongst thieves. There's good theft and bad theft. And so we're going to talk for the rest of the time about how to steal well, how to be a good thief. And I'll start with the first part. A good thief honors, a bad thief degrades. So this is a drawing of what I think the traditional model of thinking about creativity looks like. Usually when we talk about art or music or creativity, there are these great minds, right? There's someone like Beethoven. Beethoven was just this total genius, and he was born a genius, right? And he had all this music in him, and he just sat down at the piano and it just came pouring out. And the rest of us were just left to watch him and stand in awe, right? In the genius theory, creativity belongs to a few special people in the world, right? And they come here and they change everything. So that's the kind of traditional model of creativity. But the musician Brian Eno, he has a different way of talking about creativity. And he calls this theory scenius. Now, what scenius is it retells the story of creativity. So yes, you have people like Beethoven who are very talented, but they're often brought to their talents through a rich network of people and thoughts and ideas that lead to their work. So yes, you have people like Beethoven, but Beethoven was also born in Bonn, Germany, and he made his way to Vienna, which was this very rich city full of music. And Beethoven's, his grandfather was a great musician, and he relied on patrons and people with money in order to give him the resources to make his work. What I like about scenius is that it makes room in the story of creativity for all of us, especially those of us like myself who don't consider ourselves genius. When you stop worrying about genius and you start thinking about scenius, it opens up the potential for all of us to have a part to play in creativity. So when you go back to your workplaces and back to your lives after this is all said and done, think about the sceniuses you are a part of. A scenius could be your family, a scenius could be your friends, a scenius could be your workplace, your city, your country, and the world. So stop thinking so much about genius and being a genius, and start thinking about how you can be part of a scenius. Okay, so the next part, study versus skim. A good thief studies, and a bad thief just skims. It's important, you don't want to look like your heroes, you want to see like your heroes. So Marcel Duchamp, he said, I don't believe in art, I believe in artists. And this is what I think he was talking about. I think that when we're thinking about our careers and our fields, it seems so large and so humongous. It's hard to get our heads wrapped around what we're supposed to know. So what I would recommend to everyone is to start with one person that you really look up to, one hero, someone who you really want to emulate. Find out everything there is to know about them. And then find 3 people who influenced that person. Study everything there is to know about them. You know where this is going. Find 3 more people that influenced those people that came before. And when you do this method, when you swim upstream, so to speak, what you do is you build this family tree. It's a kind of intellectual genealogy. And then you have this very rich family tree that you can use and you can borrow from. And it kind of gives you a whole just a whole group of people that you can work with and use their ideas. Next up, a good thief steals from many, a bad thief steals from just one. There's an American writer, you've probably never heard of him. I'd never heard of him before I found this quote, but he said something that you might have heard. He said, if you steal from one author, it's plagiarism. If you steal from 100 authors, it's research. So something we can do is think about that family tree you've just built, all your influences. And when you're trying to come up with ideas, start thinking about them as musicians. Think about what would happen if I took all those people that had influenced me before and I started putting them together into different bands or different music groups and they jammed together, right? What would they make? So start taking your influences and mixing them together and have them jam, and then you get new ideas. I took a lot of writing workshops when I was in college, and they had this phrase that they always said. They said, write what you know. We were always being told to do that when we were kids, write what you know. But of course, a 19-year-old doesn't know anything, as you saw in the picture earlier. What I think is more important is to write what you like, right? Write the kind of book that you want to read. So when you're thinking about this, if you're an entrepreneur or you're a business person, instead of thinking about what business you can run yourself, think about the business you'd like to see, right? Think about the business you'd like to run. Think about the products you would like to use. Think of yourself as an author. Write the book that you want to read. All right, next up. A good thief credits the people who came before them. A bad thief plagiarizes. Credit is always due. We're in this culture, this digital culture, where things go on the internet and they spread around, and no one knows exactly where they came from. But it's very important for a good thief to show your sources, to talk about the people that you were stealing from. So what is credit? Let's talk about attribution for a minute. I think that credit is like the labels you see underneath the artwork at a museum. So credit is what the thing is that you're sharing, who made it and when, why the people you're sharing it with should care, how you found the thing that you're sharing, and then where people might be able to find more things like it. So if you start thinking about credit in these terms when you're online, whether you're on Twitter or Facebook, or even when you're in a meeting with your partners, think about how you can give the most credit to the things you're stealing from. Because this very interesting thing happens when you share things that you're stealing from and you give credit. You learn things in return. I've had this amazing thing happen to me online where I share the books that I'm reading and the art I'm looking at and different ideas that I'm having. And the people that I've assembled as an audience, they send me really great stuff in return. So maybe they say, say I'm looking at Andy Warhol or something like that. They might say, oh, well, have you seen the work of David Hockney? Or, I say, oh, I really like this Leonardo da Vinci guy. They say, oh, well, you should check out Michelangelo. That kind of stuff happens. So when you're open about sharing the things you love, people send you good information in return. Finally, let's talk about transforming versus imitating. A good thief transforms the things that they've stolen, and a bad thief merely imitates. Salvador Dali, he said, "Those who are afraid to imitate create nothing." So at first, we have to imitate, right? We have to kind of copy, because that's how we learn when we're young. But then eventually we have to move into our own thing. So I have a strange recommendation for you. I think the human hand is incapable of making a perfect copy. No matter how good I am as a drawer, I can never make a perfect copy of another drawing. And it's often my inability to copy a perfect drawing that makes my work unique. And so I have a very strange recommendation for y'all when you go back to work. I have 2 desks in my office. I have an analog desk, which is where I have pens, paper, scissors, tape, and that's one separate desk. And then over here, I have my digital desk that has my computer and my scanner and my printer, and that's hooked up to the internet. And one of the things that I find is that if I'm only over here in the digital desk, I'm copying, I'm taking stuff in, but I don't spend enough time with my own thoughts, letting it all kind of mix together. And so if I step over to the analog desk and I start doodling and I start writing, or I start writing on Post-its and pushing things around, all of the influences that I've taken in get mixed up in my head, and I write them down, and they become something of my own. So see if you can do that when you go back to your offices. Start an analog desk and a digital desk. You can even do this on a plane. This is my rig for when I'm traveling. Did you know you can take scissors on a plane? You can, they just have to be very short. Anyway, so finally, if you're a good thief, you end up with a remix. If you're a bad thief, you end up with a ripoff. And I'm going to end now with a quote from an Italian-American director who I love very much. He's a Southern Italian, but Francis Ford Coppola. He said, "We want you at first to steal from us. We want you to steal from us because you can't steal. You'll steal from us, you'll take it, and you'll make it into something of your own." And so I encourage all of you, do what my friend Wendy McNaughton has on a Post-it note against her desk. She says, "I rip off everyone I meet." So you've seen all these people up on stage. There's all these interesting people out in the audience. Steal something from every one of them. Rip off everyone you meet. But then take it back to your desk. Go back to that analog desk. Start putting it all together, start weaving it into something new, and then make something of your own that you can put into the world so that we can steal from you. And that's how you steal like an artist. Grazie.